From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! But doors, the House Republican Conference votes to gut the House Ethics Office. This is the new Congress opens today. We'll speak with Public Citizen's Craig Holman, who set up the Office of Congressional Ethics. Then to Turkey, where police continue to search for a man who opened fire inside a nightclub during a New Year's celebration, killing 39 people. ISIS has claimed responsibility.
Birden silah sesleri geldi. Hiç durmadan silah.
Suddenly I heard gunshots. It was unabated. Everybody started to run away. Everybody began hiding. I ran with my cousin to find a place to hide. He went somewhere, and I went somewhere else. We lost each other. After taking cover, we exchanged messages. Gunfire didn't stop.
We'll go to Istanbul, Turkey. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A new Republican-led Congress meets today, and one of their first moves, House Republicans voted Monday night to gut the Office of Congressional Ethics, dismantling reforms adapted after a previous Republican ethics scandal. The vote reportedly came as a surprise and without the support of House Speaker Paul Ryan or Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. The full House is scheduled to vote later today. Under the measure, the Office of Congressional Ethics will be renamed the Office of Congressional Complaint Review and placed under the oversight of the House Ethics Committee. The move will take away authority and independence from the investigative body and give more power to lawmakers over internal inquiries. According to the Washington Post, under new rules, the office will not be able to employ a spokesperson, investigate anonymous tips, or refer criminal wrongdoing to prosecutors without the express consent of the Ethics Committee, which would also gain the power to end any of the office's investigations. The measure's sponsor, Republican Bob Goodlatte of Virginia, said in a statement the move, quote, builds upon and strengthens the current arrangement and improves the due process rights for the House members under investigation, unquote. We'll have more on the Office of Congressional Ethics later in the broadcast with Craig Holman, who helped set up the original ethics office. In Turkey, police have launched a series of raids across Istanbul, arresting at least 12 people as police continue to search for a man who opened fire inside a nightclub during a New Year's celebration, killing 39 people. ISIS has claimed responsibility for Sunday's attack on the Reyna nightclub, where hundreds of Turks and foreigners were celebrating early in the morning. The attack killed 11 Turkish citizens and more than 24 tourists from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, India, Morocco, and other countries. This is a man who was inside the nightclub during the attack.
Actually, I didn't see him. As soon as he entered the club, he started firing, and he didn't stop. He fired nonstop for 20 minutes at least. We thought that there were several of them because it just didn't stop, and there was some kind of bomb as well. He threw some explosives. We managed to hide ourselves, and luckily he didn't go out on the terrace. He stayed inside. He didn't go out on the terrace.
On Monday, Turkish authorities released 2 photographs of the suspected gunman. Officials say the Turkish military also attacked ISIS targets in Syria Monday, killing at least 22 people. We'll go to Istanbul and to Washington, D.C. for more on the attacks later in the broadcast. In the Iraqi capital, Baghdad, nearly 90 people have died in a series of attacks claimed by ISIS militants over the weekend and Monday. At least 39 people were killed and 50 more wounded in a suicide bomb attack Monday on a fruit and vegetable market in Sadr City. Local authorities say there was also a series of smaller bombings Monday across Baghdad that killed a total of 20 civilians and wounded 70 more. Monday's attacks came after more bombings Saturday in Baghdad killed 28 people. The bombings come as the United States and Iraqi militaries continue the campaign to retake the city of Mosul from ISIS. Donald Trump is expected to name Robert Lighthizer as the head of the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative. Lighthizer served as Deputy Trade Representative during the Reagan administration. He's a proponent of trade tariffs and has been a vocal critic of China. Trump still has a handful of cabinet and cabinet-level positions to fill, including the positions of Secretaries of Agriculture and Veterans Affairs, as well as the Director of National Intelligence and the head of the Council of Economic Advisors. Many are also expecting Trump to try to give his daughter Ivanka Trump and her husband Jared Kushner official positions within the White House, a move that may violate anti-nepotism laws. The Trump Organization's ongoing business in the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, and other countries are continuing to raise questions about conflicts of interest. Last month, Donald Trump pledged his businesses would make no new deals during his time in office. However, a series of high-profile business deals are currently underway, including the construction of 2 luxury golf courses in Dubai. The first, Trump International Golf Club in Dubai, is slated to open in February, only weeks after the inauguration. Trump is developing the 2 courses with Dubai billionaire Hussein Sajwani, who attended Trump's New Year's Eve party at the Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. Meanwhile, Trump's business dealings in Indonesia are also raising concerns. The Trump Organization is currently moving ahead with plans to open 2 resorts in Bali and another in West Java. These deals have brought Trump close to an Indonesian billionaire media mogul who's formed his own political party, as well as Indonesia's Speaker of the House of Representatives, who suffered a recent corruption scandal. The New York Times reports Trump's companies are also currently moving ahead with projects in India, Uruguay, and Canada. Just weeks away from inauguration on January 20th, Donald Trump is still struggling to book performers for the event. British singer Rebecca Ferguson has said she'd be willing to accept the invitation to perform, but only if she's allowed to sing Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit. Ferguson said, quote, "If you allow me to sing Strange Fruit, a song that has huge historical importance, a song that was blacklisted in the United States for being too controversial, a song that speaks to all the disregarded and downtrodden black people in the United States, a song that's a reminder of how love is the only thing that will conquer all the hatred in this world, then I will graciously accept your invitation and see you in Washington," unquote. In labor news, one of the nation's largest unions is preparing to slash its budget in expectation of an assault on organized labor under President Trump. In an internal memo obtained by Bloomberg Businessweek, Service Employees International Union President Mary Kay Henry announced plans to cut spending by 30% by the end of next year. Henry wrote, quote, "Because the far right will control all 3 branches of the federal government, we will face serious threats to the ability of working people to join together in unions. These threats require us to make tough decisions that allow us to resist these attacks and to fight forward despite dramatically reduced resources," end quote. SEIU represents nearly 2 million workers in the U.S. and Canada. Its current budget of about $300 million funds organizing efforts like the Fight for 15 campaign to raise the minimum wage. Donald Trump's pick to head the Labor Department, Andrew Puzder, is a fast food executive, a member of an anti-union network, and a vocal critic of the minimum wage and other workplace protections. U.S. senators are continuing to call for even stronger sanctions against Russia over allegations Russian agencies meddled in November's U.S. election. Senators John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Amy Klobuchar visited the country Georgia over the weekend and vowed action against Russia. On Friday, Russian President Vladimir Putin said he would not retaliate against President Obama's move last week to expel 35 Russian diplomats and impose new sanctions on Russian agencies accused of election meddling. In Syria, anti-government rebels say they're considering pulling out of preliminary peace talks planned to take place in Kazakhstan this month, after accusing the Syrian government of violating the terms of the 5-day-old ceasefire. The anti-government rebels have accused the Syrian government of launching an assault on a rebel-held area near Damascus that is key to the city's water supply, a violation of the terms of the ceasefire that took effect late Thursday night and was welcomed by Syrians, including a resident of Idlib. The upcoming talks in Kazakhstan for later this month are being planned by Turkey, Russia, and Iran. In Brazil, officials say more than 50 people died in an uprising in a prison in the city of Manaus. At the time of the riot, the prison held more than 1,200 prisoners, 3 times its official capacity. Brazilian officials claim they've been trying to reduce overcrowding in Brazil's prisons for years over concerns about uprisings, but convictions for low-level drug offenses continue to increase the number of people incarcerated in Brazil. In Israel, police questioned Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as part of a growing corruption inquiry Monday. Officials say the questioning lasted 3 hours and was conducted at his home. Netanyahu is accused of receiving gifts and favors from business executives. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has commuted the sentence of prisoner Judith Clark, who drove a getaway car during a 1981 robbery in Rockland County that left a security guard and 2 police officers dead. The robbery was aimed at expropriating money from a Brinks armored car for the Republic of New Africa. Clark was sentenced to 75 years for second-degree murder and robbery, although she did not fire any shots. Governor Cuomo has now commuted her sentence to 35 years, meaning she's eligible for parole this year. 2 other people involved in the robbery, Mutulu Shakur, the stepfather of the rapper Tupac Shakur, and David Gilbert, a member of the Weather Underground, are still incarcerated. A growing number of people are calling on President Obama to grant clemency to Mutulu Shakur before Obama leaves office. In upstate New York, residents are continuing to call for the resignation from the Buffalo School Board of Carl Palladino, the former New York State co-chair of Trump's presidential campaign, over his racist comments about President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama. In December, Palladino responded to a question from ArtVoice, a local alternative weekly newspaper, about what he most wanted to happen in 2017 by writing, quote, "Obama catches mad cow disease after being caught having relations with a Hereford. Michelle Obama, I'd like her to return to being a male and let loose in the outback of Zimbabwe, where she lives comfortably in a cave with Maxie, the gorilla," unquote. He said he meant to send this to friends, but mistakenly sent it to the newspaper. The Buffalo School Board voted 6-2 Thursday night to give Palladino 24 hours to resign or face ouster over his racist comments. On Monday, Palladino told the Buffalo News he's still in good standing with Donald Trump. Trump has not commented on Palladino's statements. In Minnesota, 2 water protectors unfurled a massive banner from the ceiling of the Minneapolis U.S. Bank Stadium during an NFL game between the Minnesota Vikings and Chicago Bears Sunday, calling for divestment from the $3.8 billion Dakota Access Pipeline. The banner read, "Divest," and "No DAPL." That's the Dakota Access Pipeline. The 2 people who unfurled and hung from the banner were arrested. The action is part of a series of actions demanding major Wall Street banks divest from the pipeline, which has faced months of resistance from the Standing Rock Sioux in North Dakota and members of more than 200 indigenous nations from across the Americas, as well as many of their non-native allies. And the revolutionary British novelist, screenwriter, and literary critic John Berger has died. Berger is most famous for the 1972 book and television series Ways of Seeing. He won the Booker Prize that same year. This is John Berger speaking in 1972 about his reaction to winning the prize and how he planned to give half the money to the Black Panthers.
The prize is given by Booker Kennel, who are a firm who have extensive trading interests in the Caribbean for 130 years. The extreme poverty is the direct consequence of the exploitation of companies like Booker's and others. And so I intend as a revolutionary writer, to share this prize with people in and from the Caribbean, people who are involved in a struggle to resist such exploitation and eventually to expropriate companies like Booker's. I'm actually going to give half the prize to the London-based Black Panther movement.
That's John Berger speaking in 1972. He died Monday at his home in a Paris suburb at the age of 90. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. A new Republican-led Congress meets today. In one of the first moves, House Republicans have voted to gut the Office of Congressional Ethics, dismantling reforms adopted after a previous Republican ethics scandal. The vote reportedly came as a surprise and without the support of House Speaker Paul Ryan or Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. The full House is scheduled to vote later today. Under the measure, the Office of Congressional Ethics will be renamed the Office of Congressional Complaint Review and placed under the oversight of the House Ethics Committee. The move takes away authority and independence from the investigative body and gives more power to lawmakers over internal inquiries. According to the Washington Post, under new rules, the office will not be able to employ a spokesperson, investigate anonymous tips, or refer criminal wrongdoing to prosecutors without the express consent of the Ethics Committee, which would also gain the power to end any of the office's investigations. The measure's sponsor, Republican Bob Goodlatte of Virginia, said in a statement, the move, quote, builds upon and strengthens the current arrangement, improves the due process rights for the House members under investigation. Well, for more, we're going to Washington, D.C., where we're joined by Craig Holman, Public Citizen's government affairs lobbyist on campaign finance and governmental ethics. Holman helped set up the Office of Congressional Ethics after it was established in 2001. We welcome you, Craig, to Democracy Now!
Thank you.
That was established in 2008. So this happened yesterday, on the eve of the opening of Congress today. In the House Republican conference, behind closed doors, explain what you understood took place.
First of all, this was a midnight rules change that caught everybody by surprise last night. No doubt the Republicans in Congress understand that the public would view this with a great deal of hostility. And so they snuck it through last night. So we had been assured by the Republican caucus over the last 2 weeks that the Office of Congressional Ethics was going to be kept intact and reauthorized in the new year, in the new session. And then suddenly last night, we're receiving tweets that the Republicans in Congress changed their mind. They suddenly accepted this amendment to neuter the Office of Congressional Ethics and place it under the control of the House Ethics Committee, which means, by the way, placing it under control of members of Congress themselves. This caught us entirely by surprise.
So explain. Now, they're saying it actually expands the power of the Ethics Office. But can you explain why even Paul Ryan and Congressman McCarthy, the Majority Leader, and the House Speaker have opposed this?
Well, you know, I've got to find out more about Paul Ryan's stance, but the fact that the Republican caucus approved this last night as part of the rules package, I've got to hold Paul Ryan responsible as well. I understand that Paul Ryan and the Republican leadership would perceive this as being negative publicity for them, and it indeed shall be. But, you know, in the end, the Republican caucus did approve this. They're accepting it as part of the new rules change, and within just a couple hours, they're going to make it law of the House of Representatives. Paul Ryan's got to be held accountable for this, along with the entire Republican conference. Let me emphasize how big a change this is. The House Ethics Committee is a committee that is controlled by members of Congress that oversees themselves. They historically have done literally nothing but sweep ethics complaints under the rug and hide them from public view. Following the Jack Abramoff scandals, we created the Office of Congressional Ethics that is run by outsiders, not members of Congress, and made sure that their reports and analysis would become public so you and I could actually monitor what's going on in terms of ethics when it comes to the House of Representatives. Literally, once we created OCE in 2008, the number of actions taken by the House Ethics Committee and the House Ethics process literally quadrupled in that short period of time over the entire history of the House Ethics Committee. That's how important OCE is to the ethics process. And the only people who have despised OCE are the members of Congress themselves. And just last night, they have neutered this agency.
For people who don't remember, for example, the original scandal that led to this office in 2008, if you can lay out what happened with Jack Abramoff.
Well, Jack Abramoff was considered the uber lobbyist of the time, but quite frankly, you know, he was typical of K Street lobbyists. They literally had very close relations with congressional leaders, and they worked in tandem with congressional leaders. So Jack Abramoff would fly members of Congress, congressional leaders to Scotland to play golf. He had a restaurant right across the street from here called Signature's Restaurant, where he had a table set aside for free wining and dining of any members of Congress who wanted to partake. Literally, he was using money, he was using gifts, he was using travel to buy control over the House of Representatives. And it worked. The House Ethics Committee never stepped in to deal with Jack Abramoff. It was the Department of Justice that finally had to step in and charge Jack with bribery before we could finally get this under control, which is why we knew it was so important to create a new independent agency that would be outside the control of members of Congress to monitor the ethics process of the House of Representatives.
So now the Office of Congressional Ethics would have to answer to the House Ethics Committee, would not be independent, which means would be in control of the Republican and Democratic legislators.
It defeats the entire purpose and operations of OCE. First of all, it puts members of Congress once again smack dab in control of the ethics monitoring process. And secondly, it takes away the public disclosures of any type of investigation or complaint that OCE might be dealing with. So we go back to the old Jack Abramoff era of members of Congress overseeing themselves and not letting us know what's going on.
How did this come as such a surprise to so many? And of course, the significance of the first act of this Congress as the Republican president is about to be inaugurated, going to the issue of corruption and ethics, has astounded many across the political spectrum today. Isn't it possible that under enormous pressure, as people wake up to what has taken place, that the Republicans might not vote this forward in the full House?
It's highly likely the Republicans are going to ratify this. Since they ratified it last night as a midnight rules change, it's going to be the very first order of business at 10 a.m. this morning, and the House cannot operate until it ratifies its new House rules. This is the rules package. It was brought on so late to make it very difficult for the public to try to intervene and prevent this action from happening. So it's almost a done deal at this point. At 10 a.m., it will be a done deal. And by the way, it caught us so much by surprise because, you know, the entire reform community, and by the reform community, I'm including conservative groups like Judicial Watch, National Taxpayers Association, progressive groups like Public Citizen, Common Cause, nonpartisan groups like League of Women Voters. We have all, every session, got together to try to make sure that OCE would be reauthorized with each session. When we had Speaker Boehner and Nancy Pelosi as the leadership, we were assured it was going to happen. We were were a little concerned this time because we had a new figure in there, Paul Ryan, and we did not know where Paul Ryan was going to come out on this. So about 2 weeks ago, all our groups submitted a letter to Paul Ryan and Nancy Pelosi pointing out how valuable OCE is and asking that it be reauthorized. And we were reassured that it would be reauthorized. So we weren't concerned until suddenly last night when the House Republicans backpedaled on this, rewrote the rules, and are now about to neuter the OCE.
Craig Holman, you wrote an op-ed where you said no administration in history has been as fraught with financial conflicts of interest as the incoming Trump administration. From the president-elect on down, if steps aren't taken to manage these conflicts, the Trump administration is likely to become one of the most scandal-ridden in memory. Now, last week we spoke to Richard Painter, who is professor of corporate law at University of Minnesota. He was the chief White House ethics lawyer for President George W. Bush. He described a key conflict of interest under President-elect Trump.
Well,
that's right.
There are several laws. I think the most important for purposes of President-elect Trump is the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution, which is one of the most critical conflict of interest provisions for all U.S. government officials. Nobody holding a position of trust with the United States government can receive payments from foreign governments, whether gifts or a salary or profits, and that's what emoluments are, profits or benefits. It comes from the Latin root, emolumentum, which refers to profits and benefits. And so if you have somebody who's making profits from dealing with foreign governments or companies controlled by foreign governments, that person must dispense with those profits, cannot receive that money while holding any position of trust with the United States government. That applies to every U.S. government employee, including the president. And so what this means is that for Donald Trump, if he's going to hold on to these business enterprises, which present a whole range of other conflict of interest problems, to satisfy the Constitution, at a bare minimum, what he's going to have to do is get the foreign government money and money from foreign government-controlled corporations out of his business enterprise. And this includes foreign diplomats staying at the hotels at government expense, foreign governments having big parties in his hotels and canceling reservations at the Four Seasons, going over to the Trump Hotel to curry favor. All of that is unconstitutional. Also, he has bank loans outstanding, I believe, from the Bank of China, which is controlled by the government of China, and some foreign government-owned banks are leasing space in Trump office buildings. All of that has to be dealt with before January 20, or we could have a violation of the Constitution.
So that is Richard Painter, professor of law at University of Minnesota, who was President George W. Bush's ethics lawyer. And so if Craig Holman, you can put this move, this midnight hour move by the House Republican Conference to gut the House Ethics Office into this larger context of what Donald Trump brings to the presidency on January 20th.
Donald Trump is setting the tone on this. You know, when I wrote about the Trump administration is likely to be the most scandal-ridden administration in history from top down, I was talking just about the executive branch. Now it looks like it's spreading into Congress as well. Donald Trump has shirked his ethics responsibilities. He has decided not to disclose his taxes. He is waffling on whether or not he's going to set up a genuine blind trust and divest himself of the conflicts of interest that Richard Painter was just talking about. He is basically shunning his responsibility of complying with the ethics rules. And that tone has now reached into Congress. You know, part of the reason why I'm so surprised that the Republican conference in the House of Representatives repealed or have neutered the OCE is because they are going to receive a great deal of negative publicity on this. But clearly, they are looking at Donald Trump shirking his ethics responsibility and thinking if he can get away with it, they can get away with it. So, yes, we are likely to see the most scandal-ridden federal government, not just Trump administration, that we've seen, the most scandal-ridden we've seen in history. This does not bode well for the next few years.
Craig Holman, in our headlines at the top of the show, we talked about the Trump Organization's ongoing business in the United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, and other countries, continuing to raise concerns about conflicts of interest. Last month, Trump pledged his businesses would make no new deals during his time in office. However, a series of high-profile business deals are currently underway, including the construction of 2 luxury golf courses in Dubai. The first, the Trump International Golf Course there, is slated to open in February, only weeks after the inauguration. Trump is developing the golf courses with Dubai billionaire Hussein Sajwani, who attended Trump's New Year's Eve party at Mar-a-Lago Resort in Florida. Trump called Sajwani and his family the most beautiful people during his speech, his toast at the party. Can you talk about the significance of this?
Sure. Pledging to have no new deals is meaningless. The conflicts of interest exist now, and they're widespread. As far as we can determine, even though Trump won't be honest and reveal his actual, tax filings so we can confirm where the conflicts spread, so far we've been able to track conflicts of interest from the Trump Organization spanning 23 different countries. These business enterprises exist, they're operating, and the foreign governments and foreign special interests and foreign business interests understand this. And they are doing everything they can to find ways to throw money at the feet of Donald Trump in order to buy access and, in their minds, influence over the Trump administration. We've just seen 2 foreign governments had set up their national celebration days that were scheduled at the Four Seasons Hotel, for instance. And once Trump became president, they canceled that and moved it to the Trump Hotel. Clearly, the whole purpose of this is to make use of Trump's business organization for buying influence over President-elect Donald Trump. That's the conflict of interest. Every president for the last 40 years has understood the danger of those types of conflicts of interest and have placed their wealth and their business enterprises into a blind trust or divested them entirely. Donald Trump is the first president we're seeing in recent history who's just ignoring the problems that his vast empire is going to bring to this administration. This is going to be the most scandal-ridden administration we've seen in history.
Now, many are expecting Donald Trump to give his daughter, Ivanka Trump, and her husband, Jared Kushner, official positions within the White House, a move that may violate anti-nepotism laws, or does it?
It would if they're being paid. That would be a violation of the anti-nepotism law. It's rather easy to get around the anti-nepotism law by bringing them in as, say, informal consultants. These are people who don't need to be paid. They are wealthy as is. It isn't as if they need a $100,000 salary to be a consultant to the president. So as long as they're not paid, it gets around the anti-nepotism law. But it certainly bodes poorly for conflicts of interest. Trump is talking about turning his empire over to his kids to run. Well, that is the same thing as the Trump family. Trump was very critical of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation because foreign governments were throwing money into the Clinton Foundation, even though Hillary was not directly running that foundation. The purpose of those types of investments by foreign governments and foreign interests clearly was they understood that by supporting the Clinton family, they were going to get an inside track to Hillary Clinton. That's what Donald Trump was so critical about Hillary Clinton of. And this is exactly what Donald Trump is now going ahead and doing as president of the United States. He's keeping his family in control of his vast empire, and it provides a huge window of opportunity for wealthy special interests who want to buy favors from Donald Trump.
And choosing his company's top lawyer, Jason Greenblatt, to fill the newly created position of Special Representative for International Negotiations. Greenblatt is an expert in real estate law.
Yes, exactly. I mean, he is appointing people into his administration who are going to try to finesse ways around the laws, around the restrictions, and try to minimize the bad publicity that's going to come with the conflicts of interest. He is not appointing people who are going to be attentive to the conflicts of interest and abiding by the laws. These are people who specialize in getting around the laws. You know, I want to add, too, I mean, his White House counsel, Don McGahn, is someone who's been a dead-set opponent against any sort of restrictions on money in politics. And he is now going to become Donald Trump's key lawyer when it comes to domestic as well as international affairs. These are people who are specialize in making sure that Donald Trump can evade the laws.
Craig Holman, I want to thank you for being with us, Public Citizens Government Affairs lobbyist on campaign finance and governmental ethics. He helped set up the Office of Congressional Ethics in 2008. That has just been gutted by the House Republican Conference, will be voted on today by the House. This is Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. When we come back, massacre in a Turkish nightclub. We'll go directly to Istanbul. Stay with us.
Bir pazar sabahıydı, Ankara kar altında, zemheri ayazıydı, yaz güneşi koynunda, ucuz can pazarıydı, kalemim düştü kana, kalemim düştü kana. Zalimler pusudaydı, bedenim paramparça, ucuz can pazarıydı, kalemim düştü kana. Uğurlar olsun, uğurlar olsun, hüzünlü bulutlar yoldaşım olsun. Bir keskin kalem, bir kırık gözlük, yürekli yiğitlere hatıra.
Farewell by the Turkish folk singer Selda Bağcan. This is Democracy Now!, DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. In Turkey, police have launched a series of raids across Istanbul, arresting at least 12 people as police continue to search for a man who opened fire inside a nightclub during a New Year's celebration, killing 39 people. ISIS militants have claimed responsibility for Sunday's attack on the Reyna nightclub, where hundreds of Turks and foreigners were celebrating early in the morning. The attack killed 11 Turkish citizens and more than 24 tourists from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Lebanon, Jordan, India, Morocco, and other countries. This is Yunus Turk, who was inside the nightclub during the attack.
Actually, I didn't see him. As soon as he entered the club, he started firing, and he didn't stop. He fired nonstop for 20 minutes at least. We thought that there were several of them because it just didn't stop, and there was some kind of bomb as well. He threw some explosives. We managed to hide ourselves, and luckily he didn't go out on the terrace. He stayed inside. He didn't go out on the terrace.
On Monday, Turkish authorities released 2 photographs of the suspected gunman. Officials say the Turkish military also attacked ISIS targets in Syria Monday, killing at least 22 people. For more, we're going to Istanbul, where we're joined by Koray Çalışkan. He's associate professor of political science at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul. And in Washington, D.C., we're joined by Kani Shulam, director of the American Kurdish Information Network. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Let's go first to Istanbul. Koray Çalışkan, explain what you understand took place and now what is taking place in the aftermath.
Good morning, Amy. What happened was following. Before the attack, there had been 2 wings of discussion in the country. the head of the Directorate for Religious Affairs called New Year's celebrations illegitimate. Directly reporting to the Prime Minister, it's a public office paid, whose salaries were paid by Christians, Muslims, Jews, atheists, every citizen in this secular country. And he called those celebrations illegitimate. The second wing of discussions were around Santa Claus. There were people in Nazilli who put a gun on a Santa Claus and threatened him to leave the country. It happened. Only 2 days later, an ISIS terrorist attacked a nightclub, the most famous international nightclub of this country, populated by around 800 people celebrating the New Year. What happened afterwards was unbelievable. So there had been open intelligence in the country regarding a possible attack of ISIS on touristic destinations in Istanbul. So when we're talking about touristic destinations in New York, the first place you understand would be Times Square, right? Mm-hmm. All right. So if something like this happens, so you would expect the governor's office to take responsibility and secure Times Square. You don't find people, all your police force in Thompson Square Park, would you? You wouldn't. So in Istanbul, around a square mile, you have 4 very popular clubs, the most important clubs. And the top club is Reyna. And Reyna is protected by one policeman, 23-year-old kid with a light gun. I can't explain this to myself. I can't explain this to myself. Plus, there is a police precinct very close to Reyna. It is also very close. And then the guy enters the place, machine guns 800 people, killing 39 of them, leaves the place, and he's still free in Istanbul. So I can't understand.
He was wearing a Santa Claus outfit, speaking Arabic, which suggests he wasn't Turkish?
No, he was not wearing a Santa Claus outfit. There were people who were wearing Santa Claus outfits in this club, like in a New Year celebration. He was wearing a regular bomber jacket, and we don't know his name yet, but his picture is everywhere. He's not from Turkey, but he's not from an Arab country either. He's a part of the ISIS international terrorist organization. But what is worse is that this came at a time when a jihadi terrorist had been attacking people of secular lifestyles, and the government ordered the arrest of a number of youth leaders who were protesting against increasing political Islam in the country and calling for strengthening of secular. So the government attacked secular young people who demonstrate on the streets.
Koray, we're going to try to fix the audio on our transmission, and meanwhile bring in Connie Shulam, who is director of the American Kurdish Information Network, based in Washington, D.C. Connie, your take on what took place and the government's response in Turkey.
This was the textbook case of chickens coming home to roost. Or if you sleep with the dogs, you will wake up with the fleas. Turkey as a country has a high fever. If it were a human being, the doctors would say, rest and relax, take a vacation. But what has taken vacation in Turkey is common sense. We have a president who wants to hold on to power at any cost. And in the meantime, he wants to, work with these ISIS types when they were going to Syria, and also work with the West. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. And when the West knows or informs him that these killers are in his midst, he arrests them. And when the West doesn't know they're in his midst, then he lets them, go to Syria and be trained And now that they're losing in Syria, they're coming back to him and they're telling him, you're now siding with two infidels, with the U.S. and with Russia. And what you have is mayhem. It's a country going towards chaos, going towards instability, going towards, just utter chaos.
And the response of the government of Erdogan?
Well, the response has been, for example, Mr. Çalışkan pointed out that 12 people have been arrested. What hasn't been noticed or reported is that today, this morning, also a member of parliament was arrested. He was a member of the HDP, People's Democracy Party. Turkey has a Kurdish minority. They are the third largest party in the parliament. And 59 of their members, 13 of them now are in jail. And the rest, for example, there are 100 cities that are run by Kurdish mayors. About 40 of them, their mayors have been arrested. They are run by, one mayor, one man, one woman. They have co-mayorships. And so the government, yes, it has arrested some people and says it wants to crack down on this and address this issue. But, the day before this horrible tragedy happened, as Mr. Çalışkan pointed out, 84,000 mosques in Turkey were given a khutbah, which means the preaching, what to tell the believers. And they were told that, this is a pagan holiday. It shouldn't be celebrated. So there's this, government-cultivated hatred of others. And then, as a result, you have this chaos, this bombing, this tragedy of monumental proportions.
What has been the Obama administration's relationship with Erdogan, and how do you expect that to change under Donald Trump?
Well, Obama administration initially, his first trip to Europe included Turkey, and he, wanted to work with Erdogan, and he thought Erdogan could be a model, moderate Muslim leader, a country that accepts, democracy, but also is pious, if you will, respects the separation, the wall of separation between the mosque and the state. And for a while, relations were good. Erdogan was the most popular caller of President Obama in terms of when he was calling foreign heads of states, consulting foreign heads of states. But then something called Arab Spring came about, and then Turkey turned into a jihadi highway. 31,000 foreign fighters from Southeast Asia, from Central Asia, from Europe, from North Africa, from Latin America, from North America, went to Turkey, and Erdogan looked the other way. There's something called, if you live in a glass house, you don't throw rocks at others. Turkey has massive internal problems, the Kurdish issue, the seculars who are now being threatened. And these foreign fighters then went into Syria, and now the chaos that Syria is. And Erdogan, the U.S. President Obama then decided to have, he felt like Erdogan was cheating him. And Trump administration, for example, on the Kurdish issue, he says that they're good fighters, they should be supported. When the coup took place in Turkey last July, Trump called President Erdogan and told him that, he was with him. The problem is Erdogan is not with his people. Erdogan is not democratic. Erdogan, when the king of Saudi Arabia died, Erdogan declared a national mourning day, which means, his proclivities are towards an Islamic identity, an Islamic state, an Islamic country. This is what he wants to create.
This comes not long after, Koray Çalışkan, the killing of the Russian ambassador in Turkey. Can you comment on what happened there and overall what the Guardian newspaper headlined the New Year's Eve attack, headlined Istanbul nightclub attack caps off dreadful year for Turkey?
It is a dreadful year, actually. It's very sad. We have been dealing with two sources of terror. The first is PKK, the Kurdish terrorist organization, who have been attacking and bombing central Istanbul, which claimed dozens of lives. And the other is ISIS, which had been attacking innocent people and lifestyles in the country. This has been happening since 2 Junes ago. In 2014, Amy, we had 0 attacks and 0 deaths. In 2015, we have 4 attacks, 150 people died. 2016, 12 attacks and 320 people died. And now the first day of the year, the first 90 minutes of the year, 1 attack and 39 people died. This is terrible. And this is happening mostly as a result of 2 reasons. First, the central state power in Iraq and Syria was destroyed. You can't have democracy without state. You can't have democracy without rule of law. When everyone applies his own understanding of justice, like PKK, like ISIS, like Assad, and when no one resorts to universal understanding of justice, you can't foster democracy. So the West, including Erdogan, thought that to get rid of Assad and build democracy, one could support anyone who was going to Syria. The end result, we don't have a working border with Syria right now. The longest border between Turkey and Syria is not patrolled now. The terrorist who killed 39 people a few days ago entered Turkey from Syria. He was an ISIS fighter there. And no one asked his passport. No one asked for a visa. And they are within us in Istanbul right now. Unfortunately, the government is not providing its citizens with security. And worse still, Amy, a policeman who had security clearance kills the Russian ambassador in Ankara. This is a failed state.
We're talking to Koray Çalışkan, professor of political science at Boğaziçi University in Istanbul, and Kani Shulam, director of the American Kurdish Information Network. Now, you both disagree on whether the United States should support the PYD, the Syrian wing of the PKK, in its fight against ISIS. Kani Shulam, your take on this?
PYD is the most effective boots on the ground against ISIS. They are the only ones who have seen the ISIS's backs, if you will. They have fought them, they've chased them out of Kobani, and they're fighting them now in Mosul, in terms of Peshmerga in Iraq, and YPG as part of Syrian Democratic Forces in Raqqa. Islamic State is the most regressive force on the face of the earth, the most misogynistic force on the face of the earth, and it should be wiped out. And YPG is the only one that is fighting effectively. And anybody who calls himself a lover of humanity, a friend of human race, should support YPG to wipe out this cancer from the midst of the Middle East.
Your response to that, Professor Çalışkan?
I don't agree with him for a number of reasons. When you call yourself with different letters, what you do doesn't cease to be terror. If PKK called itself ABC in the United States, would it be a non-terrorist organization? I don't think so. And all organizations can do things that may look acceptable to democratic powers. And when they do this, this doesn't take them out from a network of terror. Terror should not be tolerated, whether it takes place in Syria against ISIS or whether it takes place against Turks at the center of Istanbul. PKK attacks Turks the same way they attack ISIS. Democratic polity has to use one way, rule of law, through United Nations, right? You can't just arm a wing of PKK hoping that they're going to get rid of a terrorist organization and then hope them to act like a democratic political organization. This would be a mistake. And a NATO member, United States, supplying arms to PKK in Syria and then calling it a terrorist organization in Turkey is very difficult to understand in Turkey.
Well, I want to thank you both for being here. Koray Çalışkan speaking to us from Istanbul, professor of political science at Boğaziçi University. and Connie Shulam, speaking to us from Washington, D.C., director of the American Kurdish Information Network. This is Democracy Now! We'll be back in a minute.
Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees.
That's Strange Fruit by Lewis Allen, sung by Billie Holiday. Lewis Allen, the stage name for Abel Meeropol. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we reported in headlines, the British singer Rebecca Ferguson has said she'd be willing to accept an invitation to perform at Donald Trump's inauguration, but only if she's allowed to sing the song Strange Fruit, saying, quote, "If you allow me to sing Strange Fruit, a song that has huge historical importance, a song that was blacklisted in the U.S. for being too controversial, a song that speaks to all the disregarded and downtrodden black people in the United States, a song that's a reminder of how love is the only thing that will conquer all the hatred in this world, then I will graciously accept your invitation and see you in Washington." Well, those are the words of Roberta Ferguson. I had the chance to speak with Robbie Meeropol. Strange Fruit, written by Lewis Allen, the stage name for Abel Meeropol, who is the adopted father of Robert Meeropol. He is the son of Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who were charged with conspiring to share nuclear secrets with the Soviet Union and executed on June 1953. And I had a chance to talk to him about that song that was written by his adopted father.
First, he wrote a poem, and then he put it to music. Music, by the way, that nobody can classify. It's often referred to as blues because Billie Holiday sings as a blues singer, but it really doesn't fit that genre. No one knows where it came from. And it was performed a few times, and Abel Meeropol played it for Billie Holiday at Cafe Society in Greenwich Village. And Barney Josephson, the owner, encouraged Billie to sing it, and she sang it, and the rest is history because it exploded in terms of interest. The thing about Strange Fruit that I think is so important for people to understand, it's not a dirge, it's not a mournful song, it's an attack song. It's an attack against the perpetrators of lynching. And as such, it is extremely powerful, and it's why it was banned, it's why it caused riots, it's why it helped destroy Billie Holiday's life.
In fact, Billie Holiday said each time she sang that song, she had to go in the bathroom and throw up afterwards. It so wrenched her. This song became big again in Robert Meeropol.
Yeah, well, it's been growing recently, but really one of the things that gave it a tremendous boost is somewhat ironic in that Kanye West put Nina Simone's version or singing Blood on the Leaves in the background of a rap. And it was a pretty bad rap, in my opinion. And that caused an internet controversy, particularly African Americans feeling that this was the equivalent of sacrilege to do this to this song, which got everybody thinking about Strange Fruit, everybody buying Nina Simone's record, more people recording it. So whatever Kanye West did that may offend people, it actually served a positive purpose in the long run.
That's Robert Meeropol. The Meeropol brothers and Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis, among others, are making a last-ditch appeal to President Obama to clear their mother's name, Ethel Rosenberg, and posthumously exonerate her. To see the whole interview, go to democracynow.org. That does it for our broadcast. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Burke, Nermeen Sheikh, Carla Wills, Laura Gaddis-Diener, Dina Guster, Robbie Caron, Hani Massoud, Sharina Nadura, Andre Lewis. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.